Ooh, so as you guarded your words there, I think I got quoted once as saying, we keep going in the direction we are in Edmonton will look like any random city the Soviets tried fashioning out of Siberia at anytime flat. There's probably worse examples out there. It's a matter of when we become confident with ourselves. I've retired as an architect, so I am officially a retired architect. You cannot call me an architect anymore. And I've closed down my architectural practice, but I had become so much of a specialty in doing building conservation that I'm simply a boutique practice now that just does building conservation. I consult to other architects. And I am in training to become a certified recovery coach of all things.
A recovery coach.
A recovery coach, dealing with people with addictions and trauma.
So my name is Vedran Skopac. It's a Croatian name. I'm an immigrant to Canada and Canadian for the last 16 years, all Alberta, all Edmonton, and most of it with Reimagine. I'm a partner here in this practice, specifically interested in shifting architectural typologies with goal to improve well-being and create a more sort of like healthier spaces, specifically focused on mental health. As well as social interactions and accidental encounters. And I'm also teaching at the U of C School of Architecture.
So I'll start off with a quote from Sir Winston Churchill in rebuilding the British Parliament buildings after they had been bombed in the Second World War. We shape our buildings and in turn they shape us. And I think that's very crucial here. So for the building that used to house the Royal Alberta Museum, that's a collection of our stories. The building itself was a story. It's very significant that way. There's various things about that building. I started living in Edmonton in 2012. We used to take family vacations up here all the time. Prior to that, my dad was trying to get my brother to study at the University of Alberta, which he never did, but we got to see the whole city meantime. Storyland Zoo was a great memory of mine. Anyway, so the Royal Alberta Museum, built by the people of Alberta to celebrate Canada's centennial, and it embodied all those stories of Alberta. In terms of the style of the building, euphemistically tongue-in-cheek, I call it social credit modern, because that's exactly what it looks like. The other two buildings that I would say follow that same sort of idiom would be both the Northern and the Southern Alberta Jubilee Auditoriums. The RAM is really interesting. It's very Canadian. It has all of the artwork and all the hieroglyphics about it, but it's clad in Tyndall stone. Tyndall is a uniquely Canadian stone. It comes from the Gillis Quarry, close to Winnipeg. And that was formed at the bottom of an ancient seabed. So it's limestone and it has fossils in it. Many of the fossils are very heavily carbonized and you really need to understand what you're looking at. But a lot of times, and we started looking at the cladding of the RAM this way, we found a lot of fish scales. We found a lot of snails, fossils that really hadn't carbonized that much. And we want to tear the building down, or at least there was a thought, let's tear the building down. Imagine if we started to quarry the land around Drumheller and we had all these mighty dinosaur fossils that, we cut into slabs and we clad buildings with these dinosaur fossils. And 50 years later, we thought, oh, the building's useless. Let's tear it down. And we pulverize all these dinosaur fossils into, I don't know, underlay that we use for road construction or something. That was something that really struck me about the RAM. We put all this effort and energy into something that we are really proud of, and we want to take it down, get rid of it. And it's something that I really see in Edmonton, that we have this idea that every 50 years we have to tear our buildings down and come up with something else. I would say that at that point in history, the social credit modern aside, that was an exceptionally rich period in Edmonton's architectural history. We probably had a housing stock of mid-century modern that rivaled what you see in Palm Springs these days. We could be bringing people to Edmonton to show off our neighborhoods that we are now tearing down to build skinny houses. We had some really fabulous brutalist examples. I'm thinking of the former art gallery. I'm thinking of the former school board building. I'm thinking of a lot of the buildings that Peter Hemingway did. The Hemingway Pool, great example. The Pentecostal Church, which unfortunately was torn down. And then there was Doug Cardinal, who we're still trying to understand his work. It was that far ahead of us, and we're getting rid of it. And here's his one example from that period that someone thought we could just ditch and throw out, and it made no sense. And even if it didn't have all of that meaning behind it, why are we spending hundreds of millions of dollars on buildings that we're just going to demolish anyway?
Doug Cardinal was the primary city architect.
Doug Cardinal based his practice here in Edmonton. Doug is Indigenous. He used a lot of Indigenous philosophy in his design. You can see that in buildings like the TELUS Science Center, St. Albert Place, the provincial government building, Panoka, among many others, St. Mary's Church in Red Deer, which I remember showing that around Chicago when I was living in Chicago. There was a great exhibit that I helped put together, Celebrate Cardinal, a portfolio. And we brought the architectural cognoscenti of Chicago in there, and they were dumbfounded. They left trying to pronounce place names in central Alberta. With Taskiwin? No. It was fun. And they were trying to organize bus trips to Alberta to see the amazing architecture that Doug had put together. And what do we do with it? Well, we want to get rid of it. That's unfortunate.
So you seem to care a lot about historic buildings because your profession is heavily connected, and throughout your life you saw the potential in those buildings and the importance of preserving them. But for the regular folks, just who are not as much interested in history or preserving the history, how do you convince or explain to them that this is a very important part of the city? We can't just demolish everything and build, demolish and build.
A real cut and dry argument that I would use is, do we really want our tax dollars to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build edifices that we're just going to tear down in a few years, and spend hundreds of millions of dollars more of your tax dollars to build something else? Let's build something permanent here. And then you can even take that a step further. Some people claim that Edmonton doesn't value its history because many people who are old-time families who grew up here leave Edmonton. They go to warmer climes for winter. So we don't have a lot of family heirlooms that have families here that want to keep and look after them. Maybe that's it. But what is our heritage? What are we as a people? And I look at the places that I lived in and grew up in, the railway stations. I grew up in a train station. I look at the wooden grain elevators. That's a whole bit of our culture that suddenly it's not there anymore. And few people seem to have a memory of it. Who are we as a people? Aside from what are we doing with our tax dollars?
What I think is happening with RAM is a bit different from other historic buildings in Edmonton, though, because there is some pushback on the idea of demolishing it. Can you try to explain why is that?
It was something that was just so flagrant. We spent all of this money on something. We brought the Queen out to name it after her, to dedicate the building, to visit the building. We put all this effort behind it, and now we're tearing it down. So I think a lot of people got together to rally behind saving that building. My comment at the time, looking at other cities and how their preservation movements got started. New York City, it's when Penn Station was torn down. Chicago, it's when the Glesner House was being threatened. They were all central movements, those cities. Those cities really weren't caring about their architectural history before that. And suddenly, this is something that just snapped and made everyone think, we really need to take care of our buildings. And again, so the stone on the Royal Alberta Museum, the Gillis Quarry, apparently the Gillis Quarry has got a 100-year supply of stone left. Look at all those fossils in there. We're just going to crush them up and use them for a road base.
How do you think demolition of the historic buildings or buildings in general affects emotional relationship of people with the city?
As Canadians, we study many things to look at our history. We study our music. We study our literature. We study our art, but rarely do we seem to study our buildings and look at the stories behind those buildings. I remember the giant window at First Presbyterian Church, and it was being restored. So the Presbyterian Church, that's the Church of Scotland, bunch of Scots. The window was using a very European detail instead of it being in wooden sashes. It was set directly into the stone mullions and sills and transoms, very European. Okay, and what's more is that as a packing material to make sure it wouldn't shake and vibrate and it would stay free of moisture, it was packed with oakum. Oakum is used in shipbuilding. My question was, a bunch of Scots building this, did they come from Glasgow or the Clyde River shipyard area? Yeah, they did. And that's a tremendous story in itself. And our buildings tell great stories like that. Project of mine, Old St. Norbert's Church in Provost. It's a German Catholic church. Think of the Reformation. And Germany became a very Protestant country, but there was this one section in Saxony, southern Germany, that remained Roman Catholic. Well, it's these people. And this church was built in the 1920s. So that's between two world wars. And Canada was quite a bit more British then than we are now. We were at war with this country. What on earth would bring those people to come here? There's a whole bunch of great stories in there. Our buildings tell great stories. We can learn from them. We could make history lessons in schools about them.
To me, it feels when I left Edmonton. I live in Calgary now, and coming back to Edmonton, I don't only come for the people that live in there, but the buildings. Yeah, they do bring a lot of memories to me. Especially, I haven't lived there for that long. It was 7 years, but for people who grew up in Edmonton and then moved away, coming back, seeing the things preserved and maintained, I feel like that brings a lot of joy and nostalgia and great feelings.
There's a lot of stories that we lose when we tear down buildings, or even if we keep buildings up and we just kind of forget about them. And my best example would be the Revlon building, which was a department store for Frère Revlon, a very, very ritzy Parisian department store. If you look at their catalog, they only list the stores in Paris and London and Munich, Geneva, Vienna, New York, Moscow, and Edmonton. And in Edmonton, they even say it's on Athabasca Avenue. They're referring to that specific building that's there now. If you go online, you can see their 1927 catalog, which has got these very elegant Art Deco drawings of models wearing these fabulous fur coats. Those were made in Edmonton. We were selling them to the world. And we probably had a few here to sell as well. But we've forgotten about that story. What other stories are we forgetting about? I look at the grain elevators and the railway stations. Are we going to forget about those stories?
What another city in North America that had a different approach to its development, where it tried and changed the direction in which it was going and preserving the buildings?
Toronto simply has had a lot of recent population growth. So it's expanded, it's grown. Toronto's a city actually like Edmonton in that it was a linear city. It had a train station and it had one perpendicular street. No, Toronto, two perpendicular streets that came off the train station, and then this street that ran parallel to the train tracks. In Edmonton, our street that ran parallel to the train tracks was very industrial, and the streets that ran perpendicular were very commercial and residential. Calgary was built very much the same way. Saskatoon, if you look at the way Saskatoon is built, it's interesting because at one end of that perpendicular street was a train station. The other end was the Bessborough Hotel, and the city grew around it. In trying to preserve the city that we are, cities that are really, really in touch with their heritage and history. I'd point at cities like Charleston, South Carolina. I'd point at cities, Washington, D.C., which has no center, oddly enough. You know, it has the government buildings, but it really doesn't have a downtown. I think a lot of that was reinforced by the way the city was built. It was built on the L'Enfant Plan, which is what we based our 1912 city plan after. And the city plan, through a lot of unfortunate economic demise, never did happen. Otherwise, I think that probably would have made Edmonton unique enough where we would have kept a lot of our heritage.
Jasper Library Place?
Yep.
With him, we talked a lot about how did you ensure that the building is not going to be out of use in 50 years. So his main point is, yeah, when you construct a building with this mindset of trying to understand what and how it's going to be used in the future, you're going to make sure that it's not going to just go out of use that soon. And so what would be a realistic and a healthy way of dealing with buildings that are not as, call it, useful anymore in the current space? So let's say people don't find RAM as functional anymore.
Yep.
So
as a museum, the old RAM may not be functional anymore. However, there are many other functions you can put inside that structure. It's not a commercial use, and I'll pick on commercial uses at this point because they change an awful lot. I was looking at a project the other day where it was designed as a government building. It's now a restaurant. Oh, maybe we can do offices in there. Okay, those uses changed. Looking at the RAM, I doubt if it'll go back to being a museum. We seem to have an awful lot of museums in our culture to a point where how can we retain these anymore? How can we sustain them? We have enough of grandma's attic already. You know, what are we going to do with them? So I doubt if it'll become a museum or stay a museum. What other uses can we find for it? And there have been some very creative ideas put out there. And I'm sure you've been hearing those ideas from some other architects who may be putting forth different concepts and ideas for how to reuse that building.
What do you see personally? What could it turn into?
What do I see for it? You know, it probably will remain some sort of an institutional use. Perhaps it can become a theater. It's got a great lecture hall in it. Perhaps there is another government use that needs to use it. I know that at one point, one of the departments at the University of Alberta was looking at it because it's archival facilities. It would make for a great archive. It has 3 or 4 underground levels to it. I know that there have been those parties out there saying, let's turn it into an AI center. That could well be. I would start wondering what AI centers are going to look like 50 years from now. but still 3 or 4 floors of underground use, aside from building another defense bunker, that sounds like an incredible opportunity there. So I'm guessing that it could be turned into some sort of an educational place, some sort of a college campus, perhaps, an archival facility, turn into some sort of a theater presentation facility. There are many, many uses for it.
Do you have the same approach, mindset, when you work with the brand?
Absolutely, humans are humans, no matter in which type of built environment we put ourselves in. We all need a few basic, simple things, and I don't mean just access to natural light, fresh air, and high ceilings and plants and all of these things that we may or may not fully scientifically understand. It doesn't matter. Just like we fully don't understand love and friendship, we know that trees have tremendous health benefits to us. We don't need to fully understand. We just need to accept it the way it is. On top of all of that, we create these built environments that we call cities, right? And we have the tendencies for us to move to cities more and more and live. So while we have to appreciate the rural and focus on that, we also have to keep on focusing on cities. So within this context of built environment, I think it's one of our primary obligations to just to create as healthy, the healthiest possible, which some people call sustainable, some people call regenerative. What that really means is that it's inspiring and healthy, and it really supports our mental health and well-being, right? And the exposure to sunlight and plants plays a key role, as well as social interaction, and as well as the unpredictability and absurdity of life, where we accidentally meet and create opportunities for action.
Talking about sustainability, it's kind of crazy to me that some buildings in the city live less than humans do. Like the RAM was closed down in less than 50 years of community use, and if it wasn't up for Reimagine and you, the building would have been gone by now.
As well as even Vedran development and with the help of RGC structural engineers and PCL construction managers, they were also part of our team, and as well as the other teams that were also putting their proposals, as well as all the people. I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone who helped us and other groups and directly contacted the MLAs and other governmental individuals and bodies to advocate for preservation of this important piece of cultural heritage.
On a bigger scale, looking at the city in general, what's the primary reason for people to care for repurposing buildings and sustainability?
From a very practical point, we cannot afford not to. Like, we just don't have money or time to do that. We can talk about climate change, we can talk about economic impacts, we can talk about all of those things. Everything is suggesting that we have to build repurposing, or we like to call it reimagining of existing buildings into new life, and that totally makes sense. It makes sense also from economic and point of view. So it's much faster and more economical to do that. Like the RAM in particular has exceptionally great ratio of embodied mass and carbon to its volume and size, meaning it's built with solid materials like concrete, metal, stone, right? So they are stable and they are good materials. Now, demolishing it creates more work than what it would be to demolishing something else, and costs more, takes more time, and presents a whole different sets of risks, right? So all of those things are speaking to that it makes sense to do it, even if the building wouldn't have other aspects, such as being a big part of our cultural and collective memory of who we are here as Albertans and Canadians, right? So,
why do you think that there's such a, I don't want to call it struggle, but some fights that you have to do to preserve the building with the city? Isn't it in the best interest of the city to save the money? And
Well, for what we were able to observe in at the beginning of the story was perhaps just a mere lack of imagination to have more conversations and to see what else is possible there that actually saves a bunch of taxpayers' money, and also it's much faster, and it also increases the security of this and safety of the site. We know that the government house is also on site, that it's very important. So having RAM there being having a new life as a community hub actually also has a beneficial effect to the entire site. And the community of Glenora as well, and to the identity of Edmonton as a city, and all of those things. So there's a cascading positive effects to actually do that. Now, why wasn't that perhaps always considered that way? It's perhaps because it started with one idea, one notion, but then thankfully this is a public thing, a big part of a public conversation.
Yeah.
And we got multiple perspectives to the table, and the government was so far very willing to consider those alternate views. Yeah, I haven't grown up here in Alberta, but I've spoken to a lot of people who have, and a lot of those have spoken publicly about what this particular building and site means to them in their even emotional connection to the building, as they were going there from in early childhood and start building this connection and memories. It means a lot for indigenous communities as well, and how they were represented and integrated into the site. So all of those things actually now are there, and disturbing it would actually mean that we're disturbing those relationships. Preserving it means that we have an opportunity to build on top of those relationships.
What are some good examples within the city where a building was saved? It can be your firm, it can be other firms.
Apparently there wasn't a lot of interest to preserve what it's now Oliver Exchange building, that it's you're familiar with that building, right? Which is arguably a community hub of Oliver community, one of at least, right? It's a wonderful building in the way it's designed, the way it's built, the character of the entire site, and so Ivan took on that building and just introduced a new life to it, right? So that's one building that I was involved with. That actually was the first project I was involved when I moved here to Canada, was the tower 10909 in Jasper that used to be AE Plaza, now it's WASP place, right? So that tower, the owner wanted to renovate it, to completely change the look, facade, performance, as well as the systems, and we worked with them and our engineers and contractors to do it while the tenants were in the building. And those are the two very different kind of types of scales and occupancy and programs. Illustrates how it doesn't matter what really the type of the building is, what the typology, architectural typology, what the tenants are in or not, and as long as we can start having a discussion not only about time and money, but also values. What does that bring to someone, such as tenant retention, for example, or attractiveness of site, or the generating jobs or revenue in any sort, right? So then we'll have the interest of the buy-in of the investors, the buy-in of the political bodies to actually push it through approvals faster, and I think that is the important aspect, to kind of integrate all parties, not just the architectural side.
Do you think Edmonton is, I don't want to put it that way, but like one of the worst examples on how to preserve the history in Canada?
Ooh, so as you guarded your words there, I think I got quoted once as saying, we keep going in the direction we are in Edmonton will look like any random city the Soviets tried fashioning out of Siberia at any time. anytime flat. There's probably worse examples out there. It's a matter of when we become confident with ourselves. At the Empire State Building in New York, they have an exhibit of the buildings that used to be on that site. And not too long ago, over the past 200 years, there was a farmhouse on the site. There is a commercial block on the site. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel was on that site. And now it's the Empire State Building. And at that point, New York gained a sense of maturation where it realized that it could be proud of itself. And I look forward to that point in time in Edmonton's history. And once we realize we can be proud of ourselves, I think at that point, we'll stop tearing things down. Maybe we'll keep all of our mid-century modern houses. Hopefully we won't have, it won't be at a time when we've destroyed them all and then we wonder about it.
Say it gets demolished. Is there any kind of outcome that makes you happier with the result?
If it got demolished?
If it got demolished and something came on that space, on that spot, is there any outcome?
The only positive outcome I would see if it got demolished was that we realized that we are destroying our heritage. And suddenly we stopped tearing down buildings and just leaving them as empty gravel-filled parking lots. That we look at our buildings as being permanent and being something that we're proud of, that we can live around for generations and generations and show our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, what we have done.
Anything else that you wanted to mention about repurposing RAM or anything else?
Yeah, for RAM, you asked an interesting question about, well, how does all that story about light plants and well-being factor into, is it applicable to RAM?
Yeah.
So, of course it is. While we're looking at RAM has such a strong character-defining elements, that thin stone on the exterior and all that. So we intend not to change any of that, right, and to improve it. However, there are opportunities on top of all that, such as on the rooftop is a tremendous real estate to potentially build terraces or greenhouses on top of it, which is another way of entering a new a series of conversations, whether that actually is viable, feasible, approvable, makes sense or doesn't make sense, right? But definitely brings value from the well-being and excitement type of. It's a good space to put humans in and interact with and spend a lot of time in such place, right? Yeah.
It's really nice that there are firms like Reimagine who are trying to preserve and doing good for the city.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lastly, if you could say one thing to the viewers and to the decision makers on the old RAM building, what would it be?
Look at how far we've come. It does not just deserve to be destroyed. Look at how far we have come as a people and as a province. It does not deserve to be destroyed.